Yeah, let's get into it, man. Let's get into it. We're talking about the top 5 most influential, most important non-wrestlers in the wrestling business, right? So let's go ahead and have you kick us off here, Wex, man. What you got for me? We're number 5.
All right, starting off with me at number 5 is the classic best referee you can probably think of in your entire life, and that is your boy, shirt, merch, bootleg, stealer, seller himself, Earl Hebner.
I like that. That's good. I didn't even think about referees, but I like that a lot. That's really good.
And I mean, you can talk about many things, but he's just so iconic. Like some of the best matches throughout WWF history, and then a few here and there in TNA and other places. But I mean, he's the classic ref of the Attitude Era. He's the Stone Cold ref. Like every iconic Stone Cold match, which of course you can see in the background if you're watching the video version here. Got the big cutout. I mean, I love Stone Cold. So like Earl Hebner, he just has that connection with me. Like when I think of a wrestling referee, I think Earl Hebner immediately. Like that's the first person I think of, and he's just so influential to the business. Even though him and his brother Dave, like I said, did the whole bootleg merch shit. Like, but he's like that first referee that really had character, that really played a part in the match. If that makes any sense.
No, it makes total sense.
Like he's the first iconic referee because like before him, I mean, what he had Jack Doan. I mean, shit, I don't know.
No, I mean,
they're both pretty old. They're probably around the same age, but you know, Earl Hebner's just that guy.
Yeah, Earl Hebner is the guy that gave referees in general a name. Like people cared more about the name of who the referee was after Earl Hebner. You know what I mean? Like Earl was like the first one to be like everyone knew what his name was.
Yeah, I mean, we would not give a fuck about Mike Chioda if it wasn't for Earl Hebner.
You would never know who Mike Chioda was without Earl Hebner. You see what I'm saying? You would never know like who Baby Nate. His name is it's escaping me right now, which is a terrible example.
Fuck. You wouldn't know any of these classic refs.
Why are we blanking on this?
I don't know what his name is right now.
I know probably the second.
What about Rudy Charles from TNA?
Rudy Charles, yeah. Dan Engler, also on WWE for sure. God, who am I thinking of?
Tim White, remember him?
No, yeah, Tim White for sure.
He had those hilarious suicide skits.
I feel like people are listening to this podcast and like screaming the name of this referee, the blonde guy, the guy with the classic slide in, like
Lil Nate. That's all I can think of right now.
Oh man, this is killing me. I gotta Google it. That's so sad that I'm literally having to go to Google for this. We're terrible. We even like do trivia, and I can't think of this dude. Charles Robinson.
I knew it was Charles something. God damn it. Charles Robinson.
I didn't even get to Google it, but it came in my head finally. Jesus Christ, man.
Lil Nate.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, I agree, man. I think that's a solid number 5. The first referee to kind of have his own personality. Earl Hebner's solid. Number 5 might be a little too low. This dude's probably going to be on your list too, but it's just very young still, very fresh, and shit's really turbulent right now. But my number 5 is Tony Khan.
Oh, okay.
I think that he, I mean, I know he's only been, it's fresh and it hasn't been around too long, but I mean, in 15 years or more, almost 20, I'd say in about 20 years. Let's say 15. In about 15 years, I don't think anybody has had a bigger impact on wrestling that hasn't been a wrestler than Tony Khan. I mean, obviously within the past 5 years being the main thing, but I mean, you got to give the devil his due. I mean, it's really hard to be in that WCW position. TNA got there for a little while, but didn't stay there very long, and it quickly went down to like just a kind of the high-end indies and wasn't even necessarily a second brand. It was just a different thing altogether. And I think, but AEW still, at least right now, they're still a number 2, and they came out swinging number 2. If they keep doing these shenanigans, they're going to relegate themselves to TNA status at some point if they keep doing the bullshit. But, we'll see. Hopefully it stays well. But right now, I think Tony Khan is fair to land as the bottom of the list, number 5, most influential people for sure.
Hey, I don't disagree with that. He was actually one of my honorable mentions. He didn't quite crack top 5 for me, but I totally agree with that. Like, there's nobody, like you said, with non-wrestler in the past 15 years, promoter period-wise, that's done what he's done, which is crazy, and right. I love it. Even though some people think he's crazy, which he is crazy, but I love that maniacal, kind of thing he has going on. It's great. I don't know if he's on coke or if he's just naturally revved up for fucking wrestling, which I think
when the time is right, when the time
Might
is
be a little bit
right,
of both.
I hope that he does actually do an on-screen thing. If it crashes and burns, it crashes and burns. But
I don't think it's really going to crash and burn because they just have too many great wrestlers that people want to see.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
And
I don't mean
I
crash
feel
and
like,
burn. But that's the thing too. Like we all talk about TNA like it was like secondary for a long time. But I mean, from 02 to like 2010, a solid like 8 years, they were the number 2 brand, and then they fell off. You know what I mean? Like, but they did really well for like almost a decade. Like we're not even 5 years deep with AEW yet, and the wheels are already starting to get a little wonky. I'm not saying they're falling off, but they're getting loose. Like,
but I feel like they're a way higher level up, or it's going to get bad. Even at all.
Yeah, he definitely needs to tighten that shit up one way or the other. But either way, deserve to be number 5. Where are you at number 4?
Coming in at number 4, I don't know if this guy would even make your list if you even thought about him, but he is very, very influential to wrestling, and we've mentioned him many times before, and that's David Sahadi.
Okay.
Who is the video producer for the WWE from the Attitude Era up until the angle that made him quit was the Katie Vick angle.
Yep.
Like, that's noted. He was like, that's fucking ridiculous. Fuck this shit. I'm out. But before that, literally every awesome video package for every pay-per-view that you can think of, like through the Attitude Era, the classic WrestleMania X7, the My Way, the Limp Bizkit, one of the all-time classics. That one WrestleMania promo that he had with like all the classic managers that Vince McMahon cried when he watched.
Yeah.
Like, just my childhood of like wrestling growing up, like those video packages were just so good and influential and just fantastic. No one's really been able to top what he's done since, and he still works for Impact till this day. David Sahadi, dude, number 1 video production guy ever in pro wrestling.
Yeah, I don't doubt that. I mean, video package guy for sure, no doubt about that. I mean, he's another guy I didn't think of, but that's totally right. I mean, his impact is, no pun intended, like felt for years and years and years. I literally am, I know I've said this a couple times on the show, but I've been watching since our SummerSlam episode 97 on. Well, I'm into 98 now, and I'm watching February 2nd, 98, I believe. If you get a chance, like this, I know we haven't done this in a while. That's show of the week. Go watch it. Stone Cold confronts DX, tells Shawn Michaels that he wants his ass, even if Tyson's in the way or not. It's great. It's also it's also the episode where the New Age Outlaws push the dumpster off the stage with Cactus Jack and Chainsaw Charlie in it. Really good stuff there. I forgot how well that was written. Really, really, really good. And there's a moment in the back after when JR is kind of like interviewing the New Age Outlaws, and they kind of feel a little bit bad, like, oh no, did we go too far? And DX comes to them, and they're like, no, chin up, like, you need to rock the boat, like, get ratings, like, like, it's all about you, be selfish, blah 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 blah. And it's like, damn, like the long term storylines back then were just so much better written. Like, Jesus, like, it would be 6 more months before the New Age Outlaws become in DX. Like, that would, if it was now, that would happen maybe a week before they joined. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
like, maybe.
They like to blow their load too early these days.
Yeah, it's just too, like, we real wrestling fans want longevity. We like good TV shows too, by the way. We like those, and most of those have like actual series continuity where like you have long storylines throughout a whole fucking season. Like, yes, we can have these quick angles too, but they can play off each other. You don't have to forget about the long-term stuff. And also, we don't have to have a payoff at every single pay-per-view. Like, they should keep going. Like, some of these angles should keep going. Like,
that's kind of why I like how AEW doesn't have a pay-per-view every month, and they've been the best at doing long-term storytelling and wrestling in a long time.
Yeah, that's true. Although I do feel overall their stories aren't as good.
I mean, it's not as good as some of those classic ones, but I mean, they're the closest we've got.
Yes, that's true. So,
all right, who's yours?
My number 4 is I think that he is probably, if you think about the second in command, the guy that handled took a lot of the bullshit, and also like never got a whole lot of praise, but is also kind of old and crotchety about it now. He's arguably the voice, he's the voice of our childhood. He's the voice of wrestling. It's JR. But behind the scenes, like, that dude is, I mean, and he'll brag about all of it, but he signed pretty much every legend that we all know of our childhood outside of Shawn Michaels. Like, literally outside of Shawn, that's pretty much it. I mean, I don't know if he signed Triple H. It may have been Bruce Pritchard that signed Triple H. Maybe Stone Cold too. But from The Rock on, so from 96 on and 96 to like 08, he signed everybody. I mean everybody. Like think about 96 to 08. Now that's like 12 years. It's not forever, but the landscape of wrestling from 1996 to 2008, that's
cream of the crop,
highs and lows and everywhere in between. You know what I mean? Like the dude has an eye for talent. I mean, not only is he the voice of our childhood, the greatest play-by-play announcer of all time, but his behind-the-scenes contributions, I think that if he'd never been on TV as an announcer, he'd still be one of the most influential non-wrestlers in the wrestling business ever. And honestly, when he did get in the ring, when he did get beat up, there were memorable moments. He made the most out of everything he's ever done in the ring as well. Obviously not a wrestler, but it's like anytime he's ever been in the ring, I don't think he had anything forgettable. I'm not saying that it was all great, but it was all memorable. It was all like Jim Ross was a needle mover on screen, even though he wasn't a wrestler. You know what I mean?
Of course, yeah. I totally agree. That's an excellent pick.
Yeah, number 4, Jim Ross. I actually thought a lot of these were going to be the same for us, so I'm glad they're not. But yeah, man, who you got next?
All right,
coming in at number 3 is right.
What's at number 3 right now? So
yeah.
For our bronze medal, coming in at number 3. Obviously, on my number 4 pick, I talked about some visuals, but I'm going to talk about somebody who gave us the sounds and the soundtrack to our fucking childhood, and that's Jim Johnston. He made every single song to every fucking WWF wrestler that we grew up with, like going back from like way back in the day, like up until his late butt rock years. You know, there were some bangers here or there, but Jim Johnston is the man, dude. The Stone Cold theme song, If You Smell What the Rock Is Cooking.
D-Generation X.
It's a D-Generation X. It's all about the game and how you play it. Yeah. Ain't no stopping me now. Like, I could just go on and on and on. You're dealing with the real deal now, you know, the Ministry Undertaker. Every iteration of the fucking Undertaker.
Yeah.
He is the man. And I think it was really fucking stupid of him to let him go. Like, he should still be, like, the legacy, like, advisor guy. Like, even if he's not making the music, like, no, that's not gonna work.
Yeah, give him a Legends deal and put him on like just a advisor retainer. Like, don't, I mean, yeah, sure, you don't want to use his music, but like, dude, he is the soundtrack of WWE and WWF.
Every song, even the songs that are performed by famous bands, he still wrote the original version, like Batista. The the original version didn't have the butt rock vocals. It was just you remember.
Yeah.
It's just Jim Johnston was the man. I have the WWF anthology CDs, like all of them. He's the man.
Yeah.
And without him, I don't think we would have that same connection. Like when you hear that glass shatter or if you smell, like it just hits different. It's a different vibe.
So
or do we hear that do
meow?
Are you ready? Come on now, dude. Come on now.
Yeah, dude. I think that, I mean, for me, honestly, that D-Generation X song, it was like 97, right? When it first started playing it. And so, like, I think that was the first time that I, like, heard screaming in a song that wasn't, like, a metal song. You know what I mean? It was, like, because this is, it's almost like rap rock, but, like, dude, Korn was, like, 99. You know what I mean? Like,
they
weren't...
Rage Against the Machine with some more scream.
Yeah, Rage Against the Machine-ish, but, like, this, like, he screams in that chorus. You know what I mean? Like, Rage was like more like yelly, like I mean he's like screaming, like and it's like I was like I don't know, that was like this is badass, like this is amazing, this is super cool. Jim Johnston, man, definitely songwriting legend in the wrestling world for sure. Let's get into my number 3. I know that this is gonna ruffle some feathers, but you got to give the devil his due. On-screen character, running a company, beating Vince McMahon. It's got to be Eric Bischoff in my bronze medal. He definitely deserves it. He definitely is his own worst enemy, though. I think the reason why he didn't beat Vince McMahon is because he's Eric Bischoff. But I think the reason why he did beat Vince McMahon is because he's Eric Bischoff. So, like, he is who he's supposed to be. He wasn't supposed to be the top dog. I don't think that. I think his stubbornness and his arrogance keeps him from being where he could be. But I think he's also kind of made peace with that. I think he knows that, and I think he just enjoys it. He's like, I'm still 100 millionaire if I'm not a billionaire, so I might as well like just keep being cocky and loving my life, which is great. He seems to be happy. All he does now is just talk shit with Conrad, which is great. I think he's way out of touch though. I do think he's wrong about a lot of things now. But I think first of all, I think that if you and this is my only shit talking thing about Eric Bischoff. I do think that if you genuinely believed in 2022 that the television ratings are the most important part, you're an idiot. Like not especially when you're not even taking into account anything live streaming. Like Hulu Live, YouTube, even if they are watching it live, it doesn't count. He's talking about cable. Like if you don't have who has what are you talking about, dude? Who has cable?
The only reason I have cable is it comes with my rent at my apartment. They just give you cable as a part of the thing. Otherwise, you think I would have fucking Comcast? Hell no. I'd be streaming it.
Now his one argument is like, well, I do genuinely believe that it's still the majority, meaning that like there are more people watching it on cable than there are like watching it streaming. That's probably true, but I think it's closer than he thinks. He thinks it's like 10-15% streaming. I think it's more like 30-40% streaming.
Yeah,
like,
for sure.
And so at that rate, it's like I'd still say there's 3 to 4 million people a week watching wrestling to this, and on any good, even if the numbers say, oh, it was 1.2 million here. Like, yeah, but like you're not talking about the darks. You're not talking about Rampage. You're not talking about all the clips and the highlights on YouTube. Just look at that, and you can see that there's more interest than just what you're seeing.
They get millions of views for just random clips. So it's like.
What I will say though is when wrestling was at its highest, and when TV ratings did mean the most, he did a great job, man. I mean, you can't say enough about. I mean, you have to think about how the WWF was pre-Attitude Era, pre-WCW being on Nitro, like we had clowns and trash guys and goons and like Bastion Booger, you know what I mean? Like and that was the only thing that people had. Like WCW was really just Southern wrestling without anything at all. He was the first person to make it like real, like you know what I mean? Like to try to make it more reality based, more based on pop culture at the time. And I think
he started the Attitude Era. I'll say that.
Yes, I would say that. Yes, Eric Bischoff. Yes, started the Attitude Era with the NWO. That is really what started the Attitude Era. No doubt about it. And I don't think that, I mean, really pulling that off, that angle, that style had never been done before. People would say, oh, he stole it from New Japan. No, the fuck he didn't, dude. Japan is an island. It's very awesome. It's got great culture, great wrestling, whatever. They are not influencing the entire world, especially not in pro wrestling. That was a genuine great idea of having, hey, let's bring these guys in from WWF and pretend
he might have stole like the concept of
the bones.
Maybe stole a concept of there being two companies that's actually one company, and they put them against each other. But he didn't have the idea like, let's bring in WWF guys and have Hulk Hogan turn. Like that's all him. Yeah,
all him. I mean, you got to applaud there too. I mean, yeah, bronze medal, can't say enough. Eric Bischoff, I dare say that without him, without that happening, I don't think we're talking about wrestling the way we are now. Vince McMahon wouldn't be Vince McMahon now without that happening. Vince McMahon could have failed. It could have. I mean, 96 was a bad year.
Oh,
It could have just kept going, never had a spark from WCW, and pro wrestling itself could have just died off. At that point, it really would have only been massively popular for only about 10 years. 10-year fad makes sense. But because of the Attitude Era, because of Eric Bischoff, wrestling's never going away. It'll never be gone.
Nope.
So yeah, that's my number 3. Let's give me your silver. What do you got on the silver medal there, bud?
Coming in at my silver medal is another guy who also ran his own wrestling company, but got a little help from Vince McMahon, and that is Paul E. Dangerously Heyman.
We got the same silver medal.
The same silver medal. All right. Well, I mean, and I just like, dude, ECW influenced basically modern pro wrestling of what we know today.
Yes.
Literally, like it influenced TNA, the X Division. That was influenced straight ECW. Everything we know, like even like I wouldn't say purely deathmatch wrestling in America, but dude, ECW definitely sparked the interest of some of that. Like they might have watched some guy and be like, oh, I'm gonna go back and watch these Japan tapes, and then a lot of those ECW guys are just it's so much stuff. Like the Jerry Lynn's, the RVDs, like they are the dudes who basically influence that modern style that we see today. Yeah. And if it wasn't for Paul Heyman, and then not even to mention what he's still doing in modern pro wrestling today, dude, he's that guy. He's the dude.
Yeah. I mean, listen, an argument can be made for a lot of people. Jim Cornette, for Bobby Heenan, for the greatest manager of all time. At this point, the longevity, you can't. It's Paul Heyman. I mean, there's no question
at this point.
Yeah, 4 decades, 5 maybe even 5 decades. No, 4 decades. Yeah, still 4 decades. Like
he's going into his 5th decade now because he did the 80s,
he gets in the 2030s, and I think he will. He doesn't show any signs of slowing down. I mean, I think he's going to have a spot in wrestling for the rest of his life, and he's in his early 50s. He's got a lot to contribute still, and he will, and it's going to be awesome. Arguably one of the most creative minds ever in the history of pro wrestling. I mean, to see what he did with ECW, and if we're being completely fair, when ECW became a trending thing, their roster talent-wise was shit. It was not good. They had a few good wrestlers, but the majority of their show was shit. And he just angled it the right way, wrote it the right way, got those guys behind him. Dude, he got tons of pro wrestlers in the 90s during the height of pro wrestling to work for free or bounce checks because they believed in his creative. That's insane.
Yeah.
That's insane. Like, dude, yes, easily for better or worse, whether it was manipulative and maybe not all on the up and up, whether it's half bullshit or half true or whatever, doesn't matter. The product happened. We have it now thanks to him. Not saying that he is the most honest and genuine person on earth, but this is wrestling, baby. And in wrestling, number 2 all-time most influential non-wrestler ever, Paul Heyman.
All right, so it looks like it's time to go ahead and head into that number 1 spot. And
I got a really good feeling we're going to say the same guy.
Well, the thing is, my number 1 spot, you already chose.
Oh, wow. What?
Yeah, you already chose.
There's only one here, right?
And you chose Jim Ross earlier, and that is my number 1 spot. Even though you talked about all the people that he signed and you really leaned into that side is very cool and all, but like when it comes to pro wrestling, he is the voice of fucking wrestling. When I think of wrestling, I think of Jim Ross. Like any fucking wrestling move you think of, I'm thinking of how Jim Ross calls it. And I know nowadays he's not as good as he used to be, but for me, dude, maybe because I'm like a broadcast nerd and I like that shit too, Jim Ross is the man. And you've already mentioned like The Rock, Stone Cold, all the great people he signed and all the bad people like Maven and other people like that. But Jim Ross, you've already just stated, like, even if he didn't do announcing, his influence on the business is just like it's there. It's the most like important, like one of the most important people in wrestling. Like,
yeah,
so much, and even his influence even felt beyond wrestling because some of the people like The Rock and other people that he influenced. And
yeah,
Jim Ross is great, even though he's a kind of a crazy old man these days. He's
earned his stripes. He's earned his stripes.
When I think of wrestling, and the first like non-wrestling thing I think of is the commentators calling it's a stunner, Stone Cold. Like, his passion is what fueled me, and I was like, yeah, Stone Cold. Like, dude, Jim Ross, baby, number 1 for me.
Well, I think there's only one clear number 1 here to me. I love Jim Ross. Obviously, he made my list. It's a great choice. But again, people can call me a bootlicker or whatever the fuck they want to say, but like, it's got to be Vince McMahon, dude. It's got to be number 1. Like, number 1 overall has to be Vince McMahon. It has to be.
He wrestled too much for me to do it. He wrestled too much for me to choose him.
He wrestled too much?
He was a multi-time world champion. That I can't in good faith choose Vince McMahon. I get you though. I think taking that out of consideration is a great pick.
Yes, it's the only pick. I thought for sure. I thought we were going to count down and say it at the same time.
Vince McMahon Sr. That's who I thought you were going to pick.
Dude,
because without him, you would have never got him, and we would have never got that, is all I'm saying.
McMahon. I don't think anybody would consider him a wrestler. Yes, I know he wrestled. Yes, I know he won the title. But he won the title, and it was for a storyline. It wasn't like he went on a long reign and like had classic bangers. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I mean, shit, I genuinely feel like Jim Ross might be in more wrestling matches than Vince McMahon. Like, it's very possible. You know what I mean? Like, Eric Bischoff might have been in more wrestling matches than Vince McMahon.
But Vince McMahon had higher profile matches. Stone Cold, God.
Yeah, I mean, he's not a wrestler. You know what I mean? Now Shane McMahon, you couldn't say Shane. Like, Shane's a wrestler. Like, I agree. Like, even Stephanie's a wrestler. Like, had a run as a champion. You know what I mean? A run, not like I won the title and lost it back to the guy I was feuding with in the storyline.
He was
not
the
same.
ECW champion too.
Same thing though. He overpowered Lashley. He had it for like a week or two and dropped it right back to Lashley. It's the same thing. It's the same thing.
I mean, I'm not saying your pick is a bad pick. I just didn't choose him because I feel like he's wrestled too much for me. But he's still a great, fantastic pick. It's Vince McMahon.
Vince McMahon. He is the god of this world. Like he literally is the alpha and omega of pro wrestling. I mean, there's no way around it. None of us are here without Vince McMahon. Nobody's talking about wrestling in the United States in 2022 had Vince McMahon not happened.
That's true. I mean, we never know what could have happened, but most likely, yes, you're 100% right. But without Jim Ross on his side, helping him evaluate that talent, is all I'm saying. But I get totally. You. I feel you, dog.
It was a great list, man. I think we both did a really good job.
A lot of different picks. Do you got any really good honorable mentions? Since I know I already said Tony Khan. Who do you got?
Jim Cornette's my honorable mention. Smoky Mountain Wrestling is really underrated. I actually think that Smoky Mountain Wrestling, and it's all on Peacock, like literally all of them are on Peacock. Watch it. Watch the whole thing. I think it's only like maybe 8 months worth of TVs, but dude, that's better than ECW, bar none. Like some people are like, oh, Smoky Mountain, you mean that redneck? Dude, it was a good wrestling show. Like it was really good wrestling. It was better than UWF or Global or any of those other like older. It's better than AWA to me. That's
and they had Dirty White Boy.
Yes, yeah, they had everybody. I mean, the Unabomber.
Yeah, I agree. Cornette's definitely on one of my honorable mentions, and also Mean Gene Okerlund.
Mean Gene's solid. Mean Gene's solid as well. Not mad about that.
Like he's another one. He's not the voice of pro wrestling, but he's one of those voices I think of. Like every classic promo, like Macho Man, Cream of the Crop. Like what you know of Mean Gene? You know, like that's. Or when Hogan says it, you know, it's just it invokes that classic, and then all those and the Mean Gene hotlines, just classic fucking shit right there.
Yeah, and then you got the borderline guys, right? Like to where it's like they were wrestlers, but they're known more for their backstage stuff. Like Pat Patterson to me is like Heenan. Yeah, he was first Intercontinental Champion, massive, amazing pro wrestling run. So he can't make the list because it'd be disrespectful to put him on that list because he was such an amazing wrestler, but. I would argue, especially in our generation, he's way more known for writing probably some of the best pro wrestling finishes of all time. He might be the smartest finish guy ever. Like, and that's just...
We would have no The Rock without him.
Yeah, wouldn't happen. You wouldn't have The Rock. We wouldn't
have that new DC Black Adam movie coming out if it wasn't for Pat Patterson.
Yep, Pat Patterson and Deion Sanders. That's what Dwayne says himself. Those two guys are the reason why there was The Rock. And makes perfect sense. Perfect sense.